Welcome to Now Serving a Side of Therapy, a client's introductory guide into the therapeutic world. Be sure to follow, subscribe, and comment on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. To schedule a therapy appointment, call us at 650-223-5605. For more information on this and other related topics, check out our blog at isotherapy.com, where you can also contact us through our website. I'm your host, Dalton Huckaby, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm grateful you joined me. Hey everyone, Dalton Huckaby here, licensed marriage and family therapist, host of Now Serving a Side of Therapy. In last week's episode, we talked a little bit about how grief and losses, it's more than just someone dying or other extreme situations, right? It can show up for people in different ways, like around life transitions and even in everyday mundane tasks. And for example, so maybe a high school graduate, right, doesn't get into the college that they were hoping to get into, or a child is changing schools and their friends aren't going to the same school, so now they're going to lose some of those friends. Even a mother having children and adjusting to motherhood can evoke feelings around grief and loss. And in our episode with Veronica, she talks about the importance of maternal mental health and how grief and loss can show up in different ways for mothers. Putting their dreams on hold, adjusting to personal time and space, juggling multiple unexpected events throughout the day. These are just a few examples. And this makes me think about how grief and loss can contribute to a sense of loss around like a sense of identity. And so Veronica talks about how to engage in the healing process around that grief and loss and what benefits that can bring, including developing a new sense of identity. Check out this clip from that episode.
One of the practices that I use for myself and also with my clients is like naming what it is that you feel like you've lost, right? Is it identity? Is it autonomy? Like, you really don't realize how amazing it is to use the bathroom by yourself until you have a baby right there, like watching you know?
Everywhere, right?
Yes,
everywhere.
right? Like, you didn't know that's what it was. Or even drinking hot coffee. Okay, I don't think I drank one single hot coffee until my child was over a year. And I was like, oh yes, people do this. Like, things like that, right? So I got to name what it is that I lost. And I'm saying about coffee and I'm saying about using the restroom, but like those things are valid things to say, like, I have lost. Okay, it doesn't have to be this groundbreaking thing. It's identifying, okay, I lost that.
Yeah, it's a loss of personal time, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And like you said, being able to identify it and it can make a big difference.
Yeah, and I do think it comes with practice. So this can be a bigger conversation, but I do think, like, even when we talk about ways to like reclaim your identity, or like I'm sharing kind of like the order or the system that I use, right? And kind of like moving through this, like it's okay. You need to go through enough practice of it for it to be engraved in you. So for example, for myself, I think honestly, I'm an amazing mother. Y'all, you cannot tell me anything. Do I yell
I
at my
love that.
Absolutely, I yelled at my kids. Have I been like, that's it, I'm gonna run away? And I think absolutely. But the thing that I always come back to is like, okay, so what is it about me? What am I losing right now? And sometimes it is like, Veronica, you've just been doing so much for these kids. What about you? Or it's the piece of like looking at my work. Hey, right now, political climate, like what's happening with ICE, that has been really weighing heavy. I need to identify that. And so with enough practice, it becomes like, you understand that you're not going to show up at your most perfect. You have to forgive yourself. You also can model forgiveness for your child. So there's many a times that I have gone to my kid and I'm like, I am so sorry. Me yelling at you had nothing to do with what you were doing. I was just overstimulated. Not if you wouldn't have done this, I wouldn't have yelled at you. No. It's that it was me, and normalizing that. So my kids know, hey, like I said, I think I'm an amazing mother, but I lose it too. And I know that I can go say sorry. And I know that I'm going to learn from it. But I forgot who I heard that said this, but it was like the idea that like when as people or humans we stop learning is pretty much when we die. So it's kind of like this piece, right? So there's like the naming of it. And then the other thing is the big word that sometimes I think is associated with therapy is about your boundaries. All right. Like let's check in on those. Let's check in on our emotional, our relational, even time-based boundaries. Like the
Exactly. Yeah. Boundaries are like time based and space, right? Time,
Mhm.
space, different ways to think about boundaries. And
Yeah.
yeah, and which were based on values, right? So if we can say, hey, I feel like I'm losing out on this personal space time, right? What are some ways I can like try to like work on having, like you said, like a little bit of me time, right?
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
and setting up kind of some structure and boundaries around that and not feeling guilty for it.
Yes. And so this is where I will often say, like, you just need to, what is it? Not practice before you, what is it? The idea that you pretend like you're already like that person, but you're not.
Oh,
Like
like
you're
act as if.
this, yeah, like act as if. Like sometimes this is what this needs to be. Okay. Because right, as a clinician, I'm looking at you cognitively. You're right, you've only had your experiences that you've had is what's framing what's happening here. So you want to give your brain a different experience. And so you may not believe it, but what would you say to your child? What would you say to a friend? Right. So looking at that. So naming it, boundaries, also putting away with this idea of self-care being like an indulgence. We need it all, and it looks different for all of us, right? But we need it to sustain ourselves. All right. Like it's not you.
Self-care is different from self-compassion, right?
Exactly.
So self-care, bubble bath, right? Self-compassion, how can I treat myself the way I would a friend?
Absolutely. And like I feel like I keep reminding people of that, right? And so when you're okay, so naming what's lost, really looking at your boundaries in regards to that area. And then, asking yourself, what are the things that I can do right now, like in a season? And this is where I want to emphasize that, like, for example, my kids are older. They're 8, 6, and almost 5. I can get a sitter and go take my ballet class and know that they're going to be okay. But if you would have hit me up when they were 6 months, a year and a half, and 2.5, no, I could have never imagined doing that. I would have beside myself, right? And so, like, also acknowledging, like, you may want to be a ballerina, right? Like in this place where I'm at, a ballerina, but it may look differently for a while. So that can be like when you have which I've seen more and more of, like where I do ballets, like the encouragement of if your kid can sit down there, bring the kid to ballet. Like it's not gonna be perfect. I know that's not what you want, but that's the season that you're in. Right.
Now, I have this working theory that mental health symptoms like around anxiety or depression can occur as a result of a buildup of unresolved or perhaps even unidentified aspects of grief and loss. Now, Lois H. Frears and John M. Schneider, in their article Exploring Loss and Grief Within a Holistic Framework, substantiate this idea that I have by indicating unless the loss aspect is recognized and acknowledged, and unless support is received, any significant change will become and probably remain a source of stress. That's why if you find yourself like triggered by a particular activating event, right? Someone pisses you off, basically, right? So that can actually not be from what's happening right then. It can actually be in response to something that's unresolved or identified in the past. So we can see how this buildup of unidentified aspects of grief and loss can impact our functioning, our mood, and as a result, that can have a direct impact on our relationships, right? How we show up for ourselves and others, the very heart of what this podcast is about. So, for example, we might become reactive and irritable, right? So, this idea of identifying the loss and deepening our understanding around the nature of grief and getting some support to explore that grief and loss can contribute to effective grieving and essentially growth. So this idea of viewing grief and loss through a holistic lens allows us to see how it impacts us at biological, emotional, behavioral, intellectual, spiritual, and attitudinal levels, right? So to engage in in healing around these different dimensions, Schneider proposes that we define the loss, that we have strategies for what he calls overcoming the loss. Personally, I don't think that we really overcome it. In our episode with Lindsay, she talks about how we learn to live with it. I'm more kind of attuned with that. But anyway, so if we have an awareness of how that loss impacts us, right? For example, maybe I feel more lonely, or maybe I have less energy, or I lost that sense of identity, right? Whatever that impact is. And then in actively engaging in the process of healing through acceptance and resolution, right? That allows us to free ourselves from focusing on the loss. Yes, there's going to be that period, and engaging in this healing process allows us to take that time and energy that we were using around processing the loss and apply that towards where we are today, meeting ourselves where we're at today. All right, which can then essentially, which is Schneider's last step, enhance the bereaved's ability to restore balance. So for example, say you used to spend a lot of time and energy caring for a loved one, and then they died, right? So as a result of you adjusting and engaging in your own healing process around that, perhaps you find new ways of using that time and energy in areas of your life that are going to help you adjust and develop in new and different ways as you go through the healing process and essentially create a new reality for yourself. So this idea where we are engaging in activities to resume our life's purpose. That's what we're talking about here, right? Trying to find new ways of adjusting, creating our new reality, engaging in activities that resume our life's purpose. And in the last episode, I mentioned that on the Isotherapy website, we have a grief handbook. And I refer to that one more time here, and because there is a letter writing exercise that encourages us to delve into these different steps that I've just been discussing that can help us heal our grief across multiple dimensions. And so listen to this little snippet from one of her episodes around grief and loss. And thank you for listening. We're open to your feedback and your comments. And if you have any particular questions around grief and loss, we'd love to hear them.
We talk about people assessing themselves, and that right there is a tool. So that's not something we have innately. That's something that sometimes we have to work on and build up to, is to say, what do I need? But being able to assess and say, I need help, that's huge. Even if it's reaching out to a loved one or feeling like they need therapy, just something to support them through the process, because you have to have some therapeutic process to go through the grief. And I want to point out too, I'm not saying get over, I'm saying go through it, because we're not avoiding it. We're not dodging it. We're not pretending it doesn't exist and avoiding. We are going through the murky water and we are processing it. So that way it's not prolonged. It doesn't become complex and it doesn't lead to health issues.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And even just kind of like having this psychoeducation, right, around how unresolved grief can manifest in your body, right? Sometimes that can be a bit of an impetus enough to kind of like, okay, let's try to see, how we can engage in this healing process so that it doesn't, linger and cause, further matters down the road.
Thanks for tuning in this week. Be sure to check out our next episode as we continue to explore more elements of your therapeutic journey.